This tutorial demonstrates how to create a new invoice on the mobile side of iForgeAhead. We'll begin from the home screen on the mobile side and click Invoices. This will take you to a lookup list displaying recently created invoices. From this page, click the New Invoice link in the upper right. Now we're at a screen where we'll begin the invoice by completing the header information. Select the client from this drop-down list, and the invoice date is automatically populated to the current date, but it can be changed using this drop-down control and selecting a different date if necessary. The invoice note field includes your standard default note, but you can click in this field and change the text for this specific invoice if necessary. The Sent field in the lower left helps you to control which invoices still need to be printed or emailed to a client. If this particular invoice does not need to be printed or emailed in the future, you should check this box. Otherwise, you can leave it unchecked. Once the information is complete on this screen, click the green check mark to save. This will take us to the Invoice Details screen where we can begin adding charges to the invoice. You'll see the header information that we just completed here, and the note is being displayed at the bottom. There are two main ways to add charges to an invoice on the mobile side. One way is to click Copy Prior, this link in the top of the details screen. That's a very fast way to create a new invoice, and it should be used in cases where this particular invoice is going to be the same charges or almost the same as the last invoice for this customer. We have a separate tutorial on using this feature if you'd like to learn more about it. Your other option for adding charges to the invoice is to click the Add Items button here. This will take you to a screen where you'll add charges for each horse. You'll begin by selecting the horse from this drop-down, and you should make sure that the service date is accurate to be the date that you actually worked on the horse. You can change it here if necessary. This date is used in the scheduling portion of the system, so that's why you want it to be the actual date you performed the work. Once you selected the horse, we now have a new grid listing all of your active products and services that you've set up in iForgeAhead. This list is sorted by the sequence number, which is displayed here. The sequence number is a field that you can control when you set up your products and services. And the general recommendation for using that field is to assign lowest sequence numbers to the items you charge for most frequently, because that will make those items that you use most appear at the top of the list. If you need to make adjustments to your sequence number fields in your products and services list, you can do that under the settings portion on the full screen side. Now let's begin by adding some of these charges for this particular horse. You'll do that by simply clicking the checkbox next to each item that you'd like to add for the horse. As I'm doing that, you'll see that there are two new fields available for each row: quantity and adjustment. Those are displaying the default values, which are a quantity of 1 and an adjustment of 0. So if you don't need to make any changes to those values for these items, go ahead and scroll to the bottom and click the Add Selected button. That will add the two items that we checked into the invoice, and you'll see them appearing here in the center grid. We'll click Add Items again and add some new charges for a different horse. Again, once we select the horse name, then we see the list of charges, and we can begin selecting what we'd like to add for this horse. I'll select a few charges here, and this time I'm going to make a change in the quantity field for these two rows. Do that by clicking in the quantity field and entering the new value. Once this information is just how you need it, scroll to the bottom and click Add Selected. Now we can see the 3 additional charges for this horse included in the list as well. Of course, you can continue adding charges in this way for additional horses if needed. You can also use these buttons in each row to make changes. The red X allows you to delete any particular row, and the pencil symbol allows you to edit or make changes to the information in that row. I'm going to do that here using the pencil symbol for this row and say that I forgot to make an adjustment when we were using the checklist in the previous screen. Clicking that pencil symbol takes the row into edit mode where we can change any of the fields for that row. I'll go down to the adjustment field, and the adjustment can be used to change your standard billing price to make that change for this particular invoice only. If you'd like to add an amount to your standard rate, simply type that number in this field. If you need to decrease or make your standard price lower, you should just type a minus sign before the amount. I'll do that here with -3, which will take $3 off the standard price. Once you've finished with your changes, click the green check mark to save. And that line is changed with our new calculated total for that amount. At the bottom of the list of charges, you'll see a subtotal, and below that you'll have sales tax and grand total at 0. We're also seeing the balance for this customer, and the reason that these are zeros and this balance does not yet include these charges is because the invoice has not been finalized yet. Until an invoice is marked final, it's considered a draft, and the charges in that unfinalized invoice do not affect a customer's balance. If you need to come back to this invoice later and add new charges or make changes, you can simply return to the home screen and continue elsewhere in the system. But if everything in here is complete and accurate, then go ahead and click Mark Final. That will finalize the invoice, and it will also calculate the sales tax, the invoice grand total, and now the client's account balance includes this amount. That concludes this tutorial. Thanks for choosing iForgeAhead.